He should have been screaming. The human lay crushed beneath fallen alloy beams, bones bent the wrong way, blood slowly darkening the metallic floor of the mining tunnel. Any sane species would have been begging for help, fading into panic, or losing consciousness. Instead, the human inhaled slowly, and reached for his own arm, as if this were a minor inconvenience. That was the moment the alien girl froze in absolute shock. The tunnels of Keprero Station groaned like a wounded beast. Built deep inside an asteroid claimed jointly by 3 alien empires, the station existed to harvest rare gravity-reactive minerals. The walls hummed with unstable energy, lights flickering as automated systems struggled to keep the structure intact. Ainaril hovered near the ceiling, her translucent wings vibrating softly. Her species evolved in high-pressure gas worlds, fragile by human standards. One wrong movement could shatter her bones. She was assigned as an efficiency observer, nothing more. Watch. Record. Report. She had never expected to witness this. Below her lay Jonah Mercer, a human structural engineer. Moments earlier, a containment brace had failed. The tunnel collapsed inward, throwing metal like spears. Ainaril had already assumed Jonah was dead. But he moved. Slowly. Carefully. Jonah exhaled through clenched teeth. Pain screamed through his nervous system, bright and overwhelming, but he forced it down. Panic wouldn't help. Panic never did. His left leg was broken. His right arm was worse. The bone had snapped clean, pressing dangerously against the skin. "Well," he muttered, voice hoarse but steady, "that's not ideal." Ainaril's wings stuttered. Humans were known for emotional volatility. They shouted. They cursed. They collapsed when injured. That was what the data said. Jonah did none of those things. He braced his back against the tunnel wall, gritted his teeth, and with deliberate care, placed his hands around his shattered arm. Ainaril descended without realizing she had moved. You must not touch that," she said, voice trembling. "Your limb is critically compromised." Jonah glanced up at her, sweat dripping down his face. His eyes were focused. Clear. "If I don't," he replied calmly, "it'll heal wrong. Or I'll bleed out before help arrives." Ainaril felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. Fear. Not for herself. For him. "You will induce shock," she insisted. "Pain shock is fatal to many species." Jonah gave a weak smile. "Yeah. Humans too. Sometimes." He adjusted his grip. But not always. Before she could protest, he pulled. The sound was wet. Wrong. Ainaril recoiled, a sharp cry escaping her. Her wings flared instinctively, her heart racing. This should have rendered him unconscious. This should have broken his mind. Jonah screamed, but only for a second. Then he sucked in a breath, shaking, eyes burning, and forced himself to focus. "Okay," he whispered. Alignment achieved. Ainaril stared. Her species used neural dampeners, pain-nullifying fields, and regeneration vats for injuries a fraction as severe. And this human had just reset his own bone, with nothing but willpower. "You are damaged," she said softly, unable to find a better word. Jonah huffed out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Yeah. Comes with the job." The station shuddered again. Dust rained from the ceiling. Emergency alarms howled, alien voices echoing through the tunnel network. Ainaril checked her communicator. Rescue units were delayed. The collapse had triggered a wider failure. No help was coming soon. She looked back at Jonah. He was already reaching for a torn piece of fabric from his suit. "What are you doing now?" she asked. "Splint," he answered simply. "Gotta keep it stable." Her wings trembled. "You cannot possibly walk. Your leg." "I know." He tied the fabric tight with practiced movements. "But staying here is worse." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "I'll need help." Ainaril hesitated. Alien protocol screamed at her to withdraw. Humans were classified as high-risk allies. Unpredictable. Dangerous. Emotion-driven. Yet the being in front of her was none of those things. He was broken, and still moving forward. "I am physically weaker than you," she said. "My bones cannot endure strain." Jonah nodded. "Then we don't strain them." He studied the wreckage, eyes scanning, calculating. Even injured, his mind was sharp. He pointed toward a fallen beam wedged at an angle. "If we use that as a brace," he said, "I can shift my weight gradually. You just stabilize." Ainaril realized something terrifying. Even now, he was solving problems. She swallowed and nodded. Together, they moved. Slowly, carefully. Each step sent waves of pain through Jonah, but he never screamed again. He breathed through it, counting, adjusting, adapting. Ainaril watched in stunned silence. This was not madness. This was resilience. By the time they reached a reinforced alcove, Jonah collapsed against the wall, breathing hard but alive. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "See," he said weakly. "Still here." Ainaril knelt beside him, her wings folded tight. "I have studied hundreds of species," she whispered. "None endure pain this way. None remain themselves." Jonah smiled faintly. "Yeah, that's kind of our thing." Above them, the station continued to fail. And far beyond Kepriro, alien civilizations would soon learn a truth they had long underestimated. Humans did not survive because they were strongest. They survived because they refused to stop. And this was only the beginning. The station did not fail all at once. It died slowly. Metal screamed as pressure seals warped. Gravity fluctuated in nauseating waves, pulling loose debris into erratic orbits before slamming it back into walls. Emergency lights washed the tunnels in red, painting everything like a wound that refused to close. Ainaril had seen disasters before. Controlled ones. Simulated ones. This was neither. This was entropy taking control. She hovered close to Jonah, one slender limb pressed against the wall to keep herself steady. The human sat on the floor, back against reinforced plating, breathing carefully through clenched teeth. His arm was bound tight in a makeshift splint. His leg was braced with scavenged alloy and fiber cable. He should have been fading. Instead, he was watching the ceiling. "Timing's off," Jonah muttered. Ainaril tilted her head. "What timing?" "The vibrations," he said. "They're cycling irregularly. Means the station core is compensating badly." She stared at him. "You can determine that by sound." Jonah shrugged with one shoulder. "By feel. Floors vibrate differently when load balancers panic." Her wings fluttered, a clear sign of disbelief. Jonah shifted, pain flashing across his face, but his voice stayed steady. "How long until full collapse?" Ainaril checked her wrist display. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. 16 to 20 minutes. After that, gravity fields will destabilize completely. Jonah exhaled. "Yeah, that tracks." She stared at him again. "You are accepting this far too calmly." He glanced at her, eyes sharp despite the blood loss. "Panic wastes oxygen." That sentence lodged itself in her mind. The comms crackled to life. Alien voices overlapped in frantic tones. Orders contradicted each other. Species with rigid hierarchies struggled to adapt as systems failed faster than protocols allowed. Jonah listened for a few seconds, then shook his head. "They're not getting out." Ainaril's wings stiffened. "The evacuation fleets won't reach this sector in time," Jonah said flatly. "Too many priority conflicts. Too many arguments." He pushed himself upright with effort, teeth clenched. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Fixing a problem," he said. "You cannot repair a station in this condition." He smiled faintly. "No. But I can slow it down." She watched in stunned silence as Jonah dragged himself toward an access panel half-crushed by debris. Every movement was deliberate. Pain was clearly present, but it did not control him. He pried open the panel with a metal rod, fingers trembling, and peered inside. Fusion stabilizer lines are crossed, he muttered. Someone routed emergency power wrong during expansion. Ainaril hovered closer. That system is forbidden to manual override. One mistake will vaporize you. Jonah nodded. Yep. Then he reached in anyway. Her wings flared wide. Human. Stop. Too late. Jonah adjusted a coupling with his bare hand, skin blistering instantly. He hissed but did not pull away. Instead, he gritted his teeth and forced the connection into alignment. The station shuddered, then steadied. Not fully, but enough. Alarms shifted tone. The red lights dimmed slightly. Ainaril stared, breathless. You stabilized the gravity harmonics, she whispered. Jonah slumped back against the wall, chest heaving. Temporarily. Bought us maybe 10 minutes. Her mind reeled. Entire alien engineering teams required consensus votes and layered authorization to touch such systems. And this human had just improvised a fix while injured. You act as if suffering is irrelevant, she said quietly. Jonah wiped blood from his brow. It's not irrelevant. It's just negotiable. The words echoed. The comms crackled again, this time clearer. A commanding voice cut through the chaos. All personnel in Sector Kepriro, identify and report status. Ainaril hesitated. Then Jonah gestured weakly. Answer it. She activated the channel. Observer Ainaril. One human survivor. Structural integrity temporarily stabilized. There was a pause. A single human, the voice repeated. Explain. Before she could respond, Jonah leaned closer. Tell them to reroute evac traffic through maintenance spine delta. It's still intact. Ainaril relayed the message, barely understanding how he knew. The reply came fast now. Urgent. Respectful. Instructions acknowledged. Jonah closed his eyes for a second. Far across the station, alien leaders watched data streams update. Collapse curves flattened. Survival probabilities climbed. Confusion rippled through command rooms. Who had intervened? The answer filtered in slowly. A human. Alone. Injured. Refusing to stop. Back in the tunnel, Ainaril studied Jonah with new eyes. Her species valued harmony. Balance. Avoidance of pain at all costs. Humans did not avoid pain. They moved through it. You could have died, she said. Jonah opened one eye. Still could. She folded her wings tight. Why do this? You gain nothing. He smiled, tired but genuine. Someone's got to hold the line. The station shook again, harder this time. Ainaril felt fear surge through her entire body. Jonah felt it too. But he leaned forward. All right, he muttered. Round 2. As he forced himself upright once more, Ainaril realized something profound and terrifying. Humans were not brave because they felt no fear. They were brave because fear did not get the final say. And as the station screamed around them, the galaxy took its first real step toward understanding humanity. By the time Jonah realized he was no longer alone, the galaxy had already begun to notice him. The first sign was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the sudden absence of chaos. The alarms that had been screaming for minutes cut off one by one. The floor vibrations settled into a steady hum. Even the air felt different, less desperate, as if the station itself had paused to take a breath. Jonah sat against the wall, exhausted, eyes half-lidded, pain pulsing through every nerve. He was dimly aware of Ainaril hovering nearby, her wings moving slowly now, no longer frantic. What changed? He asked quietly. Ainaril looked at her display, then back at him. Her voice trembled. The evacuation routes stabilized. Command rerouted traffic exactly as you suggested. Jonah let out a long breath. Good. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply closed his eyes again. Across the station, far from the broken tunnel, alien command centers were in turmoil. Massive holoscreens displayed structural models of Kepriro Station, once flashing red with imminent failure, now glowing amber. Survivability percentages climbed past thresholds no one had expected. And in the center of every projection was one blinking tag. Human intervention detected. Counselors from 5 species argued at once. Some demanded explanations. Others demanded blame. A few demanded silence. How did a single human override restricted systems? How is he still conscious? Why did stabilization occur only after his actions? Data analysts replayed sensor logs again and again. They slowed down footage, enhanced audio, reconstructed motion paths. They saw a broken human dragging himself across wreckage. They saw burned hands reconnecting live systems. They saw no hesitation. Fear began to replace confusion. Back in the maintenance sector, Jonah opened his eyes as voices echoed down the tunnel. Footsteps. Hoverpods. Rescue teams finally arriving. Narration straightened instinctively. They are coming for us. Jonah nodded faintly. About time. Medical drones swarmed in first, sleek, and silver. They scanned Jonah, paused, then scanned him again. Vital signs unstable, one droned. Subject should be unconscious. Jonah squinted at it. You'd be surprised what humans can ignore. The drone paused, processing. Alien medics followed, their movements cautious. None touched Jonah at first. They stared at him like he might break reality if handled incorrectly. Narration noticed. They fear you, she whispered. Jonah gave a tired laugh that turned into a cough. Good. Means they'll be gentle. As medics finally began working, injecting stabilizers and activating pain dampeners, Jonah's resistance weakened. His muscles trembled now that the crisis had passed. Narration stayed close. One of the senior officers approached her, eyes never leaving Jonah. Observer Narration. Your report states this human acted independently. Yes, she replied. And effectively. The officer hesitated. Did he display aggression? She glanced at Jonah, who was grimacing as a brace locked into place. No, she said firmly. He displayed resolve. The word spread faster than any official briefing. Resolve. By the time Jonah was loaded onto a medical transport, recordings of his actions had already crossed into civilian networks. Alien workers shared the footage in stunned silence. Engineers paused mid-shift to watch. Soldiers replayed the moment he reached into live fusion lines with bare hands. They did not understand it. But they felt it. Jonah drifted in and out of awareness as the transport lifted. At one point, he sensed movement beside him. Narration had been allowed to stay. You are becoming known, she said softly. He frowned. I didn't sign up for that. She studied him carefully. Many symbols do not. The transport doors closed. Light dimmed. Jonah finally lost consciousness. When he woke again, it was not to alarms or pain, but to quiet. A white chamber. Gravity perfectly balanced. His body felt heavy but intact. Medical casts glowed faintly along his arm and leg. Narration hovered nearby, relief written plainly across her features. You are alive, she said. Jonah blinked. Still? Heh. She let out a sound that might have been laughter. You delayed total collapse by 17 minutes, she continued. That margin saved over 4,000 lives. Jonah stared at the ceiling. Seems worth a broken arm. Her wings trembled. You altered policy. Already, new discussions have begun. Humans are being re-evaluated. That got his attention. He turned his head slowly. Re-evaluated how? Narration hesitated. As unpredictable, dangerous, and essential. Jonah smiled faintly. Sounds about right. But outside that quiet room, the consequences were already unfolding. Alien governments debated emergency doctrines. Human engineers were requested for stations once closed to them. Military analysts questioned old assumptions. One question echoed everywhere. If one injured human could do this, What could many do together? Ainaril watched Jonah rest, her thoughts racing. She had come to observe efficiency. Instead, she had witnessed defiance. She leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. You frightened them. Jonah's eyes remained closed, but his lips curved into a small, tired smile. Good, he murmured. Means they noticed. And somewhere deep in the data vaults of alien space, a new classification began to form. Not enemies. Not allies. But something far more unsettling. Humans. Do not underestimate. And the story was far from over. Jonah Mercer learned the truth before anyone told him. It was in the way people stood too far away. When he was cleared to leave the medical bay, his body wrapped in reinforced casts and neural stabilizers, the corridor outside fell silent. Engineers. Officers. Alien workers of half a dozen species. They all paused, watching him with the same careful distance one might give a volatile machine. Not fear exactly. Respect mixed with uncertainty. Jonah noticed it instantly. Yeah, he muttered under his breath. That's new. Ainaril floated beside him, her wings folded neatly. They do not know how to categorize you. Jonah snorted. Join the club. They walked through Kepero Station, now patched and stabilized. Temporary support beams lined the corridors. Human-style repairs, fast and ugly but effective, were everywhere. Alien engineering teams had copied his improvisations. That fact unsettled the leadership more than the collapse itself. In the central command chamber, representatives from 7 civilizations waited. Massive beings. Fragile ones. Minds that processed time and emotion differently. All of them turned as Jonah entered. Silence fell. A tall, crystalline figure spoke first. Human Jonah Mercer. You acted without authorization. Jonah nodded. Yep. Murmurs rippled. You violated safety doctrine, another said. You endangered yourself. Jonah shrugged carefully. Also yep. Ainaril's wings twitched. She could feel the tension tightening like a drawn wire. The crystalline being leaned forward. Why? The question echoed. Jonah looked around the chamber. He saw the survivors. The saved data. The living station. Because someone had to, he said simply. That answer broke something. Alien civilizations were built on layered permissions, rigid hierarchies, and collective responsibility. No single individual was supposed to act alone. Humans did. And that terrified them. You set a precedent, said another voice, softer but sharper. If humans act independently in crises, our systems become vulnerable. Jonah's jaw tightened. Your systems were already vulnerable. The room stiffened. He continued anyway. You build things assuming nothing will go wrong. Humans build things assuming everything will. Ainaril felt a chill ripple through her. Jonah wasn't attacking them. He was explaining. A being of flowing light pulsed thoughtfully. You are suggesting that pain, risk, and failure are tools. Jonah met its gaze. They are teachers. Silence again. Outside the chamber, data surged through the galaxy. News feeds replayed Jonah's actions from every angle. Not dramatized. Not exaggerated. Just real. Human colonies watched with pride. Alien populations watched with disbelief. For the first time, many aliens asked themselves an uncomfortable question. If humans endure pain willingly, what else are they willing to endure? The Council's final decision came swiftly. Human Jonah Mercer, the crystalline leader, announced, "You are hereby designated a crisis-independent operator. Your species will be granted advisory authority in high-risk engineering and disaster scenarios." Ainaril's wings flared in shock. Jonah blinked. That's a lot of responsibility. Yes, the leader said. And dangerous. Jonah smiled faintly. Sounds familiar. But the decision did not come without cost. Security protocols tightened around human zones. Surveillance increased. Alien military planners quietly adjusted threat models. Humans were no longer ignored. They were watched. Later, in a quiet observation deck overlooking the stars, Jonah leaned against the railing, painkillers finally wearing thin. Ainaril hovered beside him, thoughtful. "You changed things," she said. He sighed. "Wasn't trying to." She studied him. "That may be the most frightening part." Jonah laughed softly, then winced. "Yeah. We're bad at staying small." She folded her wings. "Some fear that humans will push themselves until they break." He looked out at the stars. "We already do. Then why continue?" He thought for a long moment. "Because sometimes," he said, "breaking means something new gets built." A distant alert chimed across the station. Incoming transmission. High priority. Ainaril's display lit up, colors shifting rapidly. Her voice dropped. "Jonah, it's from the outer frontier." "What kind of message?" She swallowed. "A megastructure failure. Far worse than this one." Jonah closed his eyes briefly. "How bad?" "Multiple species trapped. Evacuation impossible. Collapse imminent." He straightened slowly, despite the pain screaming through him. "Send them my way." Ainaril stared. "You are still injured. They will not authorize." "They don't need to," Jonah said calmly. "They need help." She realized then what humanity truly was. Not reckless. Not fearless. But unwilling to look away. As the stars stretched before them, Ainaril felt a strange certainty settle in her chest. The galaxy had not just noticed humans. It had invited them into its most dangerous moments. And humans had accepted. The megastructure was already dying when Jonah arrived. It hung in space like a wounded giant, a ring-shaped habitat spanning thousands of kilometers, once home to millions. Now its outer layers peeled away in slow, horrifying spirals. Fires burned without oxygen, sustained by failing energy fields. Gravity rippled unevenly, tearing cities apart from the inside. Alien fleets surrounded it at a careful distance. No one dared move closer. Ainaril stared at the holographic projection in stunned silence. This structure was designed by 12 civilizations. Its safeguards are absolute. Jonah studied the data, jaw tight. His arm was still in a cast. His leg still ached with every movement. "Absolute systems fail," he said. "Especially when they assume perfection." Alien commanders filled the chamber. Fear pressed down like a physical weight. "There is no solution," one said. "Intervention will accelerate collapse." Jonah exhaled slowly. "How many still inside?" The answer came hesitantly. "Over 2 million." Silence followed. Jonah straightened. "Then we go in." The chamber erupted. "You will die. You will destabilize it. You are one species." Jonah raised a hand, and somehow, the room quieted. "I'm not asking for permission," he said calmly. "I'm asking for cooperation." He pulled up schematics, marking weak points, redirecting stress paths, rerouting power through sections designed to fail last. Alien engineers stared in disbelief. "You're designing collapse," Ainaril whispered. Jonah nodded. "Controlled collapse. You can't save everything. Humans learned that early." The words carried weight. Human ships moved first. Not sleek. Not elegant. Industrial. Reinforced. Built to take damage and keep moving. They slammed into the megastructure's docking arms, using their own hulls as braces. Human crews worked in rotating shifts, ignoring sleep cycles, pain, and fear. They welded. They cut. They rerouted. They bled. Jonah coordinated from the command deck, voice steady even as medical warnings flared across his display. "Section Theta, release now." "But that city will tear itself apart if we don't." "Do it." The section detached cleanly, drifting away with minimal loss. Alien observers watched in silence as something unprecedented unfolded. Humans were not trying to be heroes. They were triaging reality. Ainaril floated beside Jonah, watching feeds from inside the structure. Human medics carried alien children. Engineers held collapsing beams long enough for others to escape. Pilots rammed debris fields to clear paths. They chose who to save. And they accepted the cost. "You are sacrificing yourselves," Ainaril said softly. Jonah shook his head. "We're choosing." The final maneuver came at the edge of failure. Jonah stared at the core diagram. "If we redirect the last surge through human ships, they will be destroyed," an alien commander said. Jonah nodded. "Yeah." No hesitation. Execute. Human ships locked into position. The surge hit. Space lit up like a second sun. When the light faded, the megastructure was gone, collapsed inward, controlled, contained. Millions of escape pods drifted safely in its wake. Human ships did not. The command chamber was silent. Ainaril's wings trembled violently. "Jonah!" He slumped back into his chair, exhausted, every nerve screaming. "We got them out," he murmured. "That's what matters." Medical teams rushed in. Across the galaxy, broadcasts spread. Not of explosions. Of humans holding the line. Of humans choosing loss to save strangers. Of humans refusing to let the universe decide alone. Days later, Jonah stood on a quiet platform, stars stretching endlessly before him. His body was healing. Slowly. Ainaril hovered beside him. "The galaxy is changing its doctrines," she said. "Pain. Failure. Risk. They are no longer avoided." Jonah smiled faintly. "Good. They are part of the deal." She studied him carefully. "What are humans, really?" He thought for a long time. "We're the species that keeps going," he said. "Even when it hurts. Especially then." Far beyond them, alien civilizations rewrote assumptions centuries old. Humans were not reckless. They were resilient. They were not dangerous. They were necessary. And when the universe broke again, as it always would, every species knew exactly who they wanted standing beside them. Humanity. Still moving forward. Still fixing what should not be fixable. Still calm.